just... Hello. Critic article, right? Written by Victoria Smith. It's in the May 2023 edition of the Critic, but the links into the Doober is downstairs. This is an interesting article written by somebody who obviously knows her stuff, brilliantly written, and it's discussing Hannah Barnes' book, Time to Think, which if you haven't got it yet, what's wrong with you? That's the first thing, right? Secondly, buy me a coffee, send me a super thanks, whatever you can do to help, please do. I'm expecting the plasterer today to start doing the old office ready for my new room in which to work. I'm very excited about this, very excited. Canadian warrior teacher adverts going out, yes, come on, right. It's an interesting article, right, okay? So all credit to Victoria for writing it. I have questions. But then, you wouldn't be listening if I didn't, would you? Let's go. Let's do a bit of the old, sort of, textual analysis of a document. Sort of, not right. We'll begin. We'll begin. There's a particularly revealing moment in Time to Think. Hannah Barnes' story of the collapse of the Tavistock Gender Identity Development Service. It's 2017 and senior clinical psychologist Anna Hutchinson has approached service lead Polly Carmichael to raise some serious concerns. Hutchinson is worried that thinking within the service has become too narrow, with many children being prescribed puberty blockers without due consideration of the factors causing their distress. Oh, Anna, you can't think like that, Carmichael responds. You'll go mad. Hold that one. You can't think like that, you'll go mad. Alongside the many themes explored in Barnes' excellent account, the medicalisation of childhood and gender dysphoria, the influence of transgender politics on public institutions, and neglect of safeguarding protocols, there is how far some people will go to avoid uncomfortable truths. I'd also like to note that there's been a number of whistleblowers who are willing to go further to expose uncomfortable truth, and we all owe them a debt of thanks in exposing the horrific nature of the Tavistock, which they are now busily replicating by the sound of it. You know my concerns regarding Cass and these new services. Anything that doesn't start with gender identity doesn't exist. You've been sold a pup. Here's some education for a week. In my book, needs doing away with altogether. Just stop doing it. Time to Think is about not thinking and how it can affect a workplace community or entire culture. It is only through this prism that we can understand how so many adults came to confuse halting the physical and emotional development of children while allowing them to find their true selves. How so many adults, in short, forgot what childhood and adolescence are. What happens at GIDS, a service set up in 1989 to support children questioning their gender identity, is a medical scandal. It unfolded very slowly and then, over the course of the past decade, very quickly. Increasing numbers of deeply distressed young people, most of them female, many of them same-sex attracted, some of victims of sexual abuse, were pushed towards puberty blockers. Now that's an interesting paragraph. Interesting two paragraphs. How so many adults, in short, forgot what childhood and adolescence are. Yep, ideology wrecks you. It removes your adulthood. They weren't behaving like adults. They were behaving like children. I'm sorry, I don't care. You might have thought it was a terrible thing that you were involved in, and you might have thought, oh my gosh, there's nothing I can do. There was stuff you could do. You just weren't willing to pay the price. Now that's cruel, and I understand I'm being cruel, right? But there's something going on here about how we deal with this stuff that swings between an almost weak approach to it and what is required, which is a very strong approach to it. This is just me, for your consideration, okay? Have a chat about it in the Dubris or on Twitter, I don't care, but there's a tenor to this, I think. Side effects were not, sorry, I do apologise, I've got that wrong. Side effects were not discussed, research was discontinued, indications that the treatment did not alleviate distress and that it made progression to cross-sex hormones and inevitability were downplayed. Employees who raised concerns were at best ignored and at worst accused of transphobia. Barnes' account is incredibly detailed with numerous interviews and case studies. As a study in institutional capture, it is utterly compelling. Those at the top were clearly frightened of pressure from groups such as Stonewall and Mermaids, but their responses were down to much more than cowardice. In fact, their capitulation is relatable in many ways, in ways that many of us might recognise from our own working lives. When it is beyond your remit to address the vast array of causes for a problem and the solutions you would favour are too time-consuming, too expensive, or simply too unfashionable, do you do something or nothing? Even if nothing is the least harmful option, would you have the nerve to hold out? Well, the answer is you do something. Ladies and germs, if we do not learn from what has happened with these critical social justice theories and the danger they pose to every single person in this country, if we do not learn that as individuals we must speak no matter what the cost, if we don't learn that we must either do something, you can't do nothing. This is where I get a bit. Now, let's put this straight. Don't do anything that's going to affect your job, which is essentially what's being said here by Victoria, is that they didn't do anything because they were frightened for their job. Do keep a diary, do keep a record, do keep figures, do keep a record of conversations, keep everything you need to. If that's where you're stuck, keep everything that you need to and share it with somebody in the movement. They won't make it. If they say they won't make it public, they won't. Share it with somebody in the movement so you've got a copy of it somewhere and you've got somebody else who understands. But start documenting what is said, when was it said, who by. I don't care if you work for Asda. We now understand how these people work, and doing nothing is not an option. Okay? I'm sorry, it's not. So, again, don't put yourself in any danger, but you mustn't not do nothing. I want you to start keeping a record. Start keeping a record of the wokeness in your organisation and the sort of bullshit you have to put up with. So you've got that record when it ends. Because I understand you need to keep your job. I understand that perfectly. I didn't keep mine, but I understand perfectly, and that's right. Victoria's right in that respect. But I'm saying there is not do nothing. You can't not do nothing. So therefore you do something subversive. You report them to outside people who are involved in the movement. You get them to expose the internal dealings. Send screenshots of what they're doing and what they're pushing you through. If you're a doctor, a nurse, if you work at Asda, if you work wherever it may be, if they're bringing in these affinity LGBTQI groups, if they're bringing in affinity groups for black people or white people or people who have testicles that drop lower than their kneecaps over 50. I don't care. Right? There's no nothing. That's the point I'm trying to make. You need to be subversive about this if necessary. You cannot do nothing. To repeat again, Victoria says here, rightly so, it is easy to dismiss those who ignored what was happening as having been brainwashed. Barnes shows the situation to be more complex, stating that GIDS has not generally been staffed by ideologues. This is never how it works. It's never how it works. We know this from the past. The absolutism pushed by external organisations offered a get-out to people who had already felt compromised. It gave them enough myths and thought-terminating cliches to avoid having to face the real crisis before them. I am really sorry that has occurred, okay? And I'm really sorry for the individuals that were involved. But I think this needs a police investigation. They've damaged children. If you as an individual damaged a child, you'd be up before the social services, or you'd be up before somebody. This needs a police investigation. What they have committed is a gigantic fraud on a massive scale. And the fact that you did nothing isn't going to save you. Because there were people who didn't do nothing. They did something, and it cost them. It cost them dearly. Now, when this type of retribution comes, which I think needs to, my advice, and again, once again, is make notes. Keep a diary. Share it with somebody you trust in the movement. 5 people on GC land and GC Twitter. Share it with them. Start sending. I've got people who send me stuff from all over the place. The BBC, NHS. So you can see what these numpties are up to, right? Start keeping records. There's an instance here where the trust governor, the governor of the trust, Juliet Singer, tried to discuss the relationship between pornography and the sharp rise in teenage girls disidentifying them from their female bodies. Carmichael was able to dismiss it with, "Oh, you're critical." At first, Singer did not realise this related to gender critical, an increasingly pejorative term for those who believe that sex is real, important and immutable, and not to be conflated with gender identity, or that the criticism was intended to imply that Singer was the one who had been ideologically captured. That's how they do it. It's the bait and switch. Bait and switch. Carmichael's response is childish, unworthy of someone who must once have wished to engage with child welfare on a deeper level. Then again, by that stage, just to be critical could be written off as a sign of bigotry. It was all too convenient, to such an extent that it is hard to know what anyone truly believes. It's a great article. It's much longer than that, my initial openings. I have a problem with it. And the reason I have a problem with it because it's conciliatory. It's just come to me. I don't want a reconciliation with these people. I want these people brought to justice. Right? I want these people brought to justice for what they've done. Because if anybody else did it, they'd bring them to justice. Cloaked in the garb of the NHS, cloaked in the garb of psychology, cloaked in the garb of psychiatry, cloaked in the garb of surgery. You do not get a free pass. It's a massive safeguarding fail and people should pay the price for it. People should pay the price. And those who didn't speak up, who will not be brought to the fore to pay the price, you'll have to live with it every time you shut your eyes at night. Those who say nothing, those who sit back. They're opening more. You know I've got problems with this. They're opening more. I'm sick to death of the pussyfooting around, to be truthful. It's a great article, Victoria, thank you. But it's just me going, there is a conciliatory tone in the article. Don't like it. Right? You don't reconcile with the enemy. The fact that the enemy turns out to be your neighbour is just how the game works. It's just how the game works. Right? Now, I get told off by my GCs for speaking in the language of war. Tough. Right? It's time for a little less mummy and a little more daddy. Remember the toxic parent? We need to get rid of them and get the adults in the room. And what Victoria's saying here is the adults left the room. Adults are responsible. They are accountable. It is time. It is time the government stepped in and went, okay, we need to investigate mermaids, Stonewall. There needs to be a full public investigation. And I need to head it. No, I'm kidding. There needs to be, no. I'm too unreasonable. Get somebody reasonable, like, Helen Joyce. Don't look at me. Right, so off with their heads. Or, metaphorically speaking, off with their head. We need something that's much stronger. This isn't strong enough. Come on. We've got a Tory government. Do something. Okay, it needs to be a full investigation, which needs to be public. You need to get people from GC to do it too. You can't get them on it. We're not both sides in this. Right? This is a hunt to remove a terrible cancer from our society. It doesn't need two sides. It just needs one side. Armed with the strength of the law and a government and public remit to wheedle out every single last stinking bit of it. Still a good article, Victoria. Go read it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you later.